Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
Just a moment. Just close it. Good morning, everyone. We are here. My name is Professor John Wawara. I'm the Dean of CMG Arrogant Small Faculty of Law. Thank you very much for choosing to join us this morning. And we have our host and discussant, Dr. I'll let him introduce himself, please.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Dr. Roger Sodiambo. Thank you for joining us. We're just going to start in a minute. We're starting immediately now. Sorry for keeping you waiting for about 10 minutes. Our apology, sincere apology. But thank you very much for joining. We want to welcome you in a very special way.
Very well, thank you very much. Prof, we have Professor Misheni. I hope you can hear us. We have tried to reach out to the Vice Chancellor. I think he was in a meeting. I don't know whether he is back. He was in a meeting. I think he will join us on the way. What do you advise? Do you continue as is? And then as soon as the Vice Chancellor joins, we will ask him to say a word. Prof, what is your advice? Professor Misheni, can you hear me? Professor Misheni, can you hear me? Let me check again. Ask her to. Yes. I will. Let me. We are having our DVC. She's already on. I don't know why she can't hear us. DVC, Professor Misheni, can you hear us? Oh, maybe. Oh, 1 minute. 1 minute. I think I have not. I'm not unmuted. So let me unmute her. 1 minute. Yes. Okay. Prof. Yes. Prof. Oh, sorry. Prof, I have allowed you. I have unmuted you. Can you hear us now?
Hear you very well. Prof, I could hear you before, but I think I was now.
Okay. Go.
Thank you so much, Prof. You have time to reach out to the Vice Chancellor. You can't get him.
Yes.
He's in a meeting right now, so I think I can take up both roles and we proceed.
So whenever we see.
Yeah, he can come in and say hi, isn't it? Prof, you can hear me? Professor Wamwala, are you mute?
Yeah, you continue.
Thank you so much. Yes, I have been introduced. I'm Erijoy Misheni. I'm the DVC in charge of academic, research, and student affairs, Tom Mboya University. I believe you can now hear me.
No, we can hear you. Continue. Yes.
Thank you very much. Dr. Rautaika, I hope I'm pronouncing your name properly.
Yes, Prof. Very well pronounced.
Thank you so much. We are honored to have you today. So I'll just do very few words before I introduce you to speak to us. So it is my great pleasure to welcome you all to this important conversation on beyond commoditization towards a people-centered East African community. Very important topic and timely. As we gather here today, we are reminded that the vision of East African community has always extended beyond markets, trade volumes, and the community statistics. While regional integration has often been measured in terms of customs unions, common market, and monetary ambitions, the true strength of our community lies more not merely in the movement of goods, but in the empowerment, dignity, and aspirations of our people. And I think that's why this topic is very, very timely towards a people-centered East African community. So today's theme challenges us to rethink integration. That's the way I look at it. Not as an end in itself, but as a means to human development, social inclusion, equity, and shared prosperity. That is moving beyond commoditization, invites us to place citizens, farmers, entrepreneurs, youth, women, workers, innovators at the center of policy, partnership, and progress. That is the way I understand this. But Dr. Ali is going to make it very, very clear for us. So as we listen today, we may be inspired to reflect critically, engage openly, and commit ourselves to shaping an East African community that is not only economically vibrant, but socially just and people-driven. So I am inviting all of us to take part in this very important talk, engage our speaker at the end so that we can understand this very clearly. So with those few remarks, I declare this public lecture open. Thank you. That was the first role that I have decided to take up in the absence of the Vice Chancellor. And according to the program, Professor Wamwala, if we are together, according to the program, I have another role of introducing our speaker. Can I move on to that?
Of course, please do, please do. Thank you. And maybe we could see you also, if that's all right. You don't mind. Do you know?
Now,
do you mind?
I'm using a phone. I'm not sure I'll be able to. Wow.
No, go on.
Sorry, Prof, you know, I was in another meeting. I've just walked out. So let me do the introduction. As we progress, I will be able to show myself up.
You.
But at least you can confirm to Dr. Ali, I'm not a robot.
We confirm.
I'm a human being.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. Now I want to take a few minutes to introduce our speaker. And please allow me to take you through Dr. Edifulaha Rautaika biography, very briefly. It is my distinct honor and the pleasure to introduce our guest speaker, Dr. Edifulaha Rautaika. Dr. Edifulaha Rautaika is a senior law lecturer at the Faculty of Law, Tumaini University, Makumila in Arusha, Tanzania, and a former Harvard Law School visiting researcher. While at Harvard, Dr. Rautaika examined the intersection of extractive industry, that is mining, oil and gas extraction, and the community rights and the international and comparative law. A Fulbright scholar, he holds a doctorate in law from the University of Arizona, master's degree from the Universities of Oregon and KwaZulu-Natal, and a Bachelor of Laws from the University of Dar es Salaam. Using theoretical, comparative, and interdisciplinary approaches and materials, Dr. Rautaika teaches, researches, and writes on the following areas of law, among others: public international law, human rights law, jurisprudence, constitutional law, natural resources law, mining, oil and gas law, indigenous peoples' rights, and advanced legal research and writing. He recently served as the founding Global South visiting scholar at the University of British Columbia, and as a visiting scholar at the University of Bayreuth, that is in Germany, and the Stellenbosch Institute of Advanced Studies in South Africa. Additionally, he has guest lectured, presented papers in several universities across Africa, Asia, Europe, and North America, connected to collaborative research project with other scholars. Between 2017 and 2019, Dr. Lautaika served as an expert member of the UN Permanent Forum on Indigenous Issues, following appointment by the President of the Economic and Social Council of the United Nations. Previously, Dr. Lautaika was a senior fellow at the Office of the High Commissioner for Human Rights in Geneva. Recognizing his impact in the law while working to support local communities, Dr. Elifla is the 2022 recipient of the Svetlana Klamtsenko Environmental Rights Award. That was in Oregon, USA. An advocate of the High Court of Tanzania since admission to the bar in 2010, the African Court on Human and People's Rights acknowledged Dr. Lautaika's expert contribution in the landmark case informing the Ogiek indigenous peoples and the government of Kenya. He currently chairs the Community of Practice, a think tank of practitioners and scholars from Eastern and the Horn of Africa, interested in the security of customary land tenure and the traditional livelihoods it protects. In addition to teaching law, Dr. Lautaika consults widely on indigenous peoples and environmental and social standards, notably the application of the UN Guiding Principles on Business and Human Rights, the International Finance Cooperation Performance Standard 7, and the World Bank's Environmental and Social Standard 7, among others, for investment projects in Africa. His work has contributed to the signing of several free, fair, and informed consent agreements and the adoption of indigenous peoples planning frameworks across Africa. He is the chief editor of the Tanzania Privacy Professionals Association Journal and associate editor of Tuma Law Review and the Tuma Journal of International and Comparative Law. He has published articles in peer-reviewed journals, co-authored UN reports, and authored book chapters published by Edward Elgar Publishing, Elsevier, Duke University Press, and others. Members, looking at that, I am summing up Dr. Itoka with very few words. Dr. Lautaika exemplifies the rare combination of scholar, practitioner, and advocate, someone whose work not only advances legal thought, but also meaningfully transforms lives and communities. Members, that is the person going to speak to us today. Please join me in warmly welcoming Dr. Elifla Lautaika to speak to us. Daktari, you are welcome.
Thank you very much, Professor Micheni, for the very kind introduction. I gathered that I'm one of the very few scholars in the region who have been introduced by the DVC. So this is really humbling. I could also gather that your first name is pretty much the same as mine, except the language. Yours is in English and mine is in Kiswahili. Colleagues, it's a great honor. Dean Marwa, I don't know if how I can put. Can you enable me the video, please? Or I can speak this way, whichever works for you.
1 minute, 1 minute. We are doing that even as we. Let's see. Just a give me. Let me see. Can I? I'm putting it as a panelist. I don't know whether now that gives you powers to. Could you just try to do video now? Is that fine? Try to video and then ask. I'll ask also if, for example, how do you want your presentation done? Do you want to project it? If you can project from your end, that's fine.
Yes, but I've also sent to Dr. Rogers.
Oh, and we have it as well. So if you want us to do, could you now try to do?
Yes, you can do from there. You can do from there. It's perfect for me.
Sorry?
You can project, and then I can speak from here.
Oh, you want us to project?
Yes, please.
Oh, okay. So here we go.
Or screen share. Let me share.
Just 1 minute. Let me just share.
Okay. Okay.
I'll sharing this. So we can share it. Okay. Let me know. Can we? I hope people can see. Can you see it now?
I think I'm seeing something else.
Wait. Okay. Yes, I think it should be fine now.
Oh, great. Yes, I can see it right now.
There we go.
I hope it's the case also for you over there.
Very well, we can see it. Thank you.
Can you see it? Okay, all right.
Just a
so
minute.
I was saying,
before you start,
right.
I think Professor Ochola, are you here so that you can say a word before we start? Our VC, right? VC, are you able to come in? Maybe not. We will continue. Please go, continue. Thank you.
Right. So, Dean, do you allow me to?
Just continue now, please.
Right. So, dear colleagues, once again, thank you very much for inviting me to be a guest lecturer, a guest speaker in this very important university, of course, named after a very prominent African leader and the son of the African soil, who is also a historic figure. We learn about him and we admire. Also, again, I said that it's really humbling as a lecturer, for the meeting to be attended by very, very high-ranking officials, the VC, the DVC. Of course, I ran a bit of a survey among my colleagues, and it's quite humbling. But it's also very special. Talk to me not only because I'm connected virtually by one of my longtime collaborators, Professor Ojwang, but Odhiambo, but because also I speak to the new class of law students. I'm told this is the first year in the Faculty of Law, and I want to encourage you because now you may think probably you don't have other students to learn from, but I can assure you that there's usually some blessings, massive blessings that come with the first class. If I can use a metaphor, of a pastoralist, if you drink boiled milk, you are blessed if you'll be the first to drink the top layer. The same applies to those who have been to boarding school. You understand when I say if you go and be the first to be saved. And this is also has practical implications because I remember teaching the first class also in my law faculty. And this, ladies and gentlemen, has went to places. We have people working in really, really prestigious international and as well as national and regional institutions. So to the class, the first year class of the law faculty at Tom Mboya, I think that's my encouragement. Don't worry, make the most use of your time there. Having said that, when I was preparing, Dean, you can continue. When I was preparing my presentation, I noted that regional integration is now forming very, very prominent discussions among scholars. And this is because of the mutual benefits that countries gain when they unite or when they make some regional cooperation among themselves. And one of the most prominent regional economic groups or integration is our very own, the East African community, which of course is expected to morph into a political federation when it is not specified, and probably for a good reason. But currently, as you most of all know, it actually allows free movement of goods and services in 8 countries. So it's a huge market. So we have in place the customs union, the common market, and soon we'll have the monetary union, and of course, the elephant in the room, the political federation where we are expected to have one president for the region. But so you would agree with me that given the pace and given the cooperation, especially in terms of goods and services, deservedly, the EAC can be said to be exemplary. But despite these accolades, the EAC has failed to address colonial legacies and its resultant problems facing communities divided by the international borders. And these challenges include community disconnections and the fragmentation of sacred sites and rangeland resources. I'll talk about it, how things were pre-colonial and how colonial borders have disrupted that. But we all know that the problem is really because of the colonial blueprint. We know we have Western legal thought as the template. Then you can go to the second paragraph, I think. Yes. I'm almost, because I can see it from here, different slides. So you can go to the second slide. Yes, so I think as my presentation will show, number one is the colonial blueprint. We are using legal philosophy and legal tools originating from colonialism. But another is overemphasis on commercialization and commoditization. It appears we formed the EAC precisely in order to foster our ability to exchange, commodities. And we have not gone beyond that to make sure that issues that cannot be reduced into monetary terms are also factored in the integration process. But also because of international law. International law overemphasizes principles such as sovereignty, state sovereignty, and so on and so forth. And that is a problem to the integration process. Now, let me start by making us a reminder of the colonial borders and the principle of uti possidetis. You all know that I think I've gone too far. Colonial borders and uti possidetis. Yes, that's correct. So in these slides, I want to show that we have transitioned from colonial borders to gradually embracing historical connections between communities. That's a big step forward. And you remember that pre-colonial societies in Africa had nations, and the impact of the Berlin Conference was really to dismantle the nations that were known. And creating, it's akin to dividing, the bread among colonial powers. They just made imaginary boundaries and divided the continent among themselves. And then what happened when we gained independence? Different things, but most important for my talk is the principle of uti possidetis, which simply means that we commit to respecting colonial borders. So upon attainment of independence, you remember the debate we had in Nyerere and Lumumba. And Lumumba was very radical. He said, let's unite today. And Nyerere was a bit pragmatic, saying, okay, let's do this by phases, probably the East African part, the Western African, and then we'll attain the dream of having the United States of Africa. But despite those ambitious and very constructive visions of uniting Africa, they also agreed on uti possidetis, which, as I said, is a principle that allows respect to colonial borders. And of course, experts of conflict resolutions, and I know most of you are, would say that was a very important step among African leaders, because it caused or it avoided a lot of interstate conflicts. It minimized interstate conflicts, because otherwise one state would have fought against the other state to reclaim the land, if not by respecting colonial borders. But I belong, and Dr. Rogers as well, we belong to a multidisciplinary cohort of scholars who look at these things from the decolonial perspectives. And one of our key takeaway is that that was sanctioning and legitimizing colonial disruptions and the atrocities. And therefore, any solutions like solutions embedded in regional economic integration would have also revisited the principles of uti possidetis and see how you can disentangle communities that were affected by legitimization of the disruptions. And one of the other negative aspects of legitimizing colonial disruptions and disconnections and fragmentation of communities is that it heightened the principle of state sovereignty. And I know law students really like this, is foundational principles of international law and also territorial jurisdictions. But what these principles do is to provide some legal basis for excluding someone who falls out of your borders, right? You have very, very strict border patrol rules that would, enforce, very, very, very stringent conditions and probably punishments for people who may cross the borders. So it's quite negative. Dean, please, another slide. Yes, but apart from those challenges, regional economic communities or integration are seen as enablers of cooperation in a wide range of waterfront, and they lead to harmonization and relaxation of border control. Apart from agreeing that the principle of uti possidetis would be the guiding principle, allowing or avoiding interstate conflicts, what the states did was also to accept or to embrace regional economic cooperation, which enabled them to harmonize their laws, relax border control legislations, and also enabled discussions among scholars to revisit some of the challenges that are inflicted by the communities. One of our own scholars here at the Faculty of Law, Tumaini University Makumira, Professor Ruhangisa, has a very important edited volume of the East African laws that also talks about how regional economic corporations relax these colonial rules of international law, like, that allow for very, very strict exclusion and patrol legislation, and border patrol legislation. But the East African community is one of those recs that has enabled relaxation of those rules. But another important thing that recs do is to open up spaces for policymakers to spotlight communities divided by international borders, despite the historic disconnections. So our own EAC has also opened up the spaces that were not available prior to the integration process for policymakers in the region to say, wait a minute, we have communities that have been disrupted, that had shared cosmologies, had shared spirituality, had shared even intergenerational sharing of rangeland resources. So next, please, Dean. So one of those institutions is called the East African Legislative Assembly, which is one of the organs of the EAC. It is a parliament, if you like, and it sits here in Arusha, very, very few kilometers from here, the Faculty of Law of Tumaini University Makumira. So it has a committee called the Regional Affairs and Conflict Resolution, which revisited some of the challenges caused by the Berlin Conference, by the international borders for communities falling in Kenya and Tanzania. But before I revisit that report by EALA, let me look at the EAC integration process very, very quickly. Of course, as I said, we now have 8 countries under one roof operating as the East African community, despite challenges. Some of you who are following up on the EAC would know that they are undergoing turbulent moments now for countries or member states are not paying their dues on time. But that is a story for another time. Now, it's probably important to say that the EAC, as we see now, is a reincarnation. It's something that resurrected following the collapse in 1977. So we had the defunct EAC that collapsed in 1977, and that was barely a decade after it was founded. So currently we have a brand new or a resurrection based or founded by the East African Community Treaty of 1999. And as I said, there are 8 countries forming the current EAC. But usually I really like Article 5 sub 2, which is very ambitious because it talks about, and I quote, it says, in order to strengthen and regulate the industrial, commercial, social, political, and other relations of the partner states, to this end, there should be accelerated, harmonious, balanced development and sustainable expansion of economic activities, the benefits of which shall be equally shared. And it actually provides some stages of the full integration, which I mentioned. The last one is political federation, which is yet to come. And the treaty is also silent on the timeline. When are we expecting the EAC to move into a full political federation? But despite those challenges and despite labeling it as overambitious, I think it is fair to conclude that the EAC is exemplary, is a model REC in the region and probably globally. Next, please, Dean. But despite being a model, it has failed. It may also succumb to the causes of the death of its predecessor, right? And many scholars have revisited reasons why it collapsed, the defunct EAC, and some talk about divergent political ideologies and the uneven distribution of fruits of the integration. And of course, the diplomatic rift that engulfed Tanzania and Uganda. Most of you remember that Tanzania and Uganda had to fight over a border in Kagera region, and probably that contributed immensely to the collapse of the EAC, the defunct EAC. Political ideologies are very well pronounced. Tanzania was a socialist state by that time, and its partners, its neighbors embraced other economic models. Of course, uneven distribution of fruits of the integration is also mentioned. And I think my assignment to students is to see whether the current EAC is in any way insulated from succumbing to the causes of death that befall its predecessor, the defunct EAC. But one of my own teachers, Professor Issa Shivj, known to most of you, teaches at the University of Dar es Salaam, looks at it very differently. And he says it collapsed because of imperialism and the fragile unity and political foundations, right? So he looks at it from a very wider vision, right? That it failed to address colonial legacies. But back to the East African Legislative Assembly. Remember, I told you that RECs, regional economic communities, provide policymakers with the material, the spaces for revisiting some of the challenges of colonialism. And one of these institutions is the East African Legislative Assembly, which is one of the organs of the EAC. It is a parliament, in other words. It sits here in Arusha, and it can also have rotational meetings across member states. But it has a very important committee called the Committee of Regional Affairs and Conflict Resolution. So this committee, at one time, it had a mission where it went through and sort of look at the implementation of the Common Market Protocol. And let me say from the outset that in East Africa alone, in the EAC region, multiple communities are affected by the international borders, not only the Maasai, who will be the case study of this of this talk. So IALA, the East African Legislative Assembly, made a mission to Longido district here in Tanzania and Kajiado district in Kenya. And the mission was to look at the implementation and the challenges of the Common Market Protocol. So the mission had one important objective: to look at the progress as well as the challenges encountered in the course of implementing the Common Market Protocol. Now, as I said, I look at these things from the decolonial lenses, and already I see a big challenge there because you look at traditional communities and then the framework for analyzing their integration, their fully enjoyment of the benefits of the integration process, and then you use the Common Market Protocol. I think that was a fault line because it is to commoditize their life, which involves spirituality, cultural connections, and so on and so forth, some things that cannot necessarily be reduced into monetary terms. Dean, next, please. So the report, the IALA, the East African Legislative Assembly, conducted the mission, came up with a report, and the report acknowledges shortcomings of the Westphalian state configuration and the concomitant religious adherence to international law principle of uti possidetis that legitimizes colonial atrocities by enforcing inviolability of colonial borders, right? So, excellent report, and it's available online. So the East African Legislative Assembly agreed that by agreeing to be bound by the principle of uti possidetis and to enforce laws in the Westphalian state configuration faction and overemphasis of colonial borders, then it affects communities, traditional communities that were forcefully divided by the imaginary international borders. And allow me, Dean, to read one of the key findings that I find it to be extremely instrumental to my talk. It says, and I quote, "The Maasai-speaking peoples that transcend the Tanzanian and Kenyan borders share a cosmology and history that predates colonial experience. One of the negative impacts of the imperative of the Berlin Conference was to interfere and interrupt the family and cultural ties that occupy the Longido and the Kajiado plains." I can't emphasize it more. I think the honorables, the members of the Legislative Assembly must have a scholar, a historian among themselves, because this is quite important. It provides the stepping stone for scholars to really build arguments around colonial atrocities and how that has affected. So we are in agreement from the outset that policymakers have grappled with those challenges, and they agree, number one, that these communities share a cosmology and history that transcends communities. And they also agree that by enforcing colonial laws, colonial blueprints, colonial templates of laws that have a backing of state sovereignty and strict border control rules, these communities are affected, and the smooth family and cultural ties are highly disrupted. Now, I added in a book chapter published by the University of Arizona recently, I added and I said there are three things that are irreparably interrupted by the colonial borders for these communities. Number one is the cross-border spiritual and cultural rights. Here in Tanzania, for example, we have a sacred mountain called Oldonyo Lengai, which is sacred for all the Maasai, regardless of where they live or on the border. But those who were divided, who were lucky to be on this part of the colonial borders, have access to the sacred mountain, and those who fall elsewhere have not, unless you go through very complicated border issues, including having a passport issued to you in your country and so on and so forth. But the second one is this connection of families. You'd agree with me, and some of you who come from other border parts of the region would agree that these people is not just conceptual and academic. They have families. These are families that were divided, and therefore that ability to interact is impaired, and it's considered illegal. They may do that from time to time, but whenever there's disagreement between these states, you see that possibility is highly interfered with. But the third one is inability to share rangeland resources. And I talk about this for pastoralists in the advent of climate change. There is a sharing of rangeland resources. Grazers can come graze on one part of the border, but this is considered illegal based on the laws currently enforced, which are inspired by colonialism, the Eurocentric formation of international law. But the solution has finally been found. And as I said in the abstract that was shared to my talk, the solution is found in the emerging norms of international law that are embedded in the United Nations Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples. And for the sake of time, I would cite Article 34, which talks about, requires states to enable communities that have been disrupted by colonial borders to have some spiritual and cultural interactions. What do I want to say here? In a nutshell, we have international law, Eurocentric, and inspired by the colonial legal thought, which considers anything that doesn't fall within the framework of what is considered legal by Westerners to be illegal. And therefore, Africans have challenges to be innovative and to be bold, to look at these things from different angles. I want to submit here that the EAC falls short because it follows that colonial blueprint. And it is inspired by commoditization and market access. So the right for spiritual connection, for example, is not catered for, because for you to move using, for example, the common market protocol, it is about goods and services. So anything that doesn't really fall within that is considered illegal. And by way of conclusion, I can see my time being, I'm concluding in a few minutes. So number one, it's not disputable that the EAC is a model REC, is a model regional economic cooperation bloc, and it has inspired quite many others in Africa. But it's also not disputable that it falls short of addressing challenges that do not properly fall within the protocols that are being negotiated, signed, and come into force. The most prominent being on the common market protocol. So for example, if I have my right to spiritual connections across the board, to cultural connections, to intergenerational heritage, then that is not catered for. And the solution, as I said, is found in international law, the emerging norms of United Nations Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples, which say, no, states have the obligations to ensure that communities that were divided by international border continue their right to interact from the spiritual and cultural viewpoint, not necessarily because their interaction may advance commerce among states. Dean, having said that, I thank you very much. Back to you, over to you. I'll be happy to respond to any questions that students and the colleagues here may have. Over to you, Dean.
Thank you, Prof. Thank you very much for that wonderful presentation. That is thought-provoking, especially at a time like this. We really do appreciate those insights that you've given us, of course, reminding us about colonial disruptions, especially trying to legitimize the historical connection that have actually been disrupted by the colonialism. And of course, that has very much affected the lives of communities. And of course, then the gaps that we see even between the legal norms, but also with the lived realities of communities in terms of their culture, and of course, even spiritual aspects. I think this is very critical, especially the idea that the focus is really on commodity. The focus is really on commerce, as opposed to the cultural values, and of course, even spiritual values that define people, that actually define communities. So this is very problematic, especially at this particular time. But then we are looking into the East African community as, of course, the integration, the RECTs, but in this particular point, thinking of the EAC as a tool that can also be used to redress some of these disruptions that we have seen over the years. That somehow, unfortunately, also seem to define us as a people, because then there's a sense in which we have also do not understand our own identity in a way that we feel lost in terms of our culture and also in terms of our spirituality. But then more importantly, fundamentally, is the idea that borders, physical borders have been erected, and this has serious implications on lives of communities that have been divided by those physical borders. It's not something that we have known until the coming in of the colonial masters. So again, this is serious. So I think at this particular point in time, I want to invite comments, and I want to invite questions from our viewers. Is there anyone who has a question to ask, or a question for our speaker, or even a comment is still welcome before I also give my own comment of this? Thank you.
Doc, let me be the first one to ask a question. I agree with you, especially with the challenges we've had when it comes to realizing the indivisibility of communities. Yes, our borders, one, they presume it and they demand it. Number one. Number two, do you see a possibility that a federation would be, a political federation would be the answer to this? Or you are asking us to rethink the integration process so that these aspects, or that you are saying, and I agree with you, are not included in the negotiation, are properly placed, and in fact, as a matter of urgency, addressed. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dean. yes, first and foremost, I'm very skeptical about political federation. I don't see it coming any sooner. And you are right. My call is rethinking the integration process, right? And I hope this is not to be too radical, but to have another protocol that talks about spirituality and cultural connection for communities, especially those divided by borders, and family. See, and if, in my view, if we do that, we'll be going into pages of history as very innovative wreck. That is not only inspired by commerce, increasing the market, and even political federation. This is an area that is more related to the common wananchi. The Jumuiya will get rid of many challenges that afflict communities. You want to go to a ceremony across the border, and you cannot because you are considered alien while it is one community. I know there are challenges relating to security, but those should not be emphasized to the extent that the integration, the community is seen as not people-centered. So you are right, Dean. That is my line of argument. I call upon going beyond the templates, the colonial templates that are inspired by the Eurocentric international law framework, and also the need for commercialization and commoditization. And these are not my words. Professor Shivji talks about them even more eloquently. That we have a huge departure from the Pan-African vision that inspired the defunct EAC. Remember, the defunct EAC was a step towards attaining African unity. So that was a Pan-African vision that it was cast within. But this one, honestly speaking, is about dollar, the shillings, the markets. And we need to go beyond there by looking at these important things, spiritual, cultural, intergenerational, and family affairs. Thank you. Over to you, Dr. Rogers. Yeah.
So thank you, Doc. Thank you very much for those thoughts. Seeing someone, Simon Ogutu, Simon Ogalo, please go right ahead and ask your question. Simon,
we are meeting
in a minute.
Thank you. I will try to move others and move others. We cannot keep on them just side. Yes, we have unmuted you, so go on and speak. And probably we could just advise that you could also just type on the chat. If you have questions, you can type on the chat. But I've seen Simeon. I've also seen Leslie who has raised their hand. There was Simeon. Okay, Simeon, please go on and speak.
Okay, thank you. I'm Gado Simeon. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. Go on.
Yeah, Doctor, you spoke about the ESC having failed to resolve colonial blueprint. And does this mean that the ESC is not independent? Are they still confined by the colonial blueprint rules? And is there any ways that this there is a time that is coming when they will be independent in their dealings? My second question is, you spoke about overemphasis on commercialization and exchange, which is the main agenda of ESC. How does the ESC try to solve issue of similar products apart from the IALA committee, even though IALA committee may always try to make their dealings, make their ways of seeing. Does all the ESC countries, does they comply with what the IALA committee puts across? And how does they try to deal with other countries that do not are not well convinced by their dealings? Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ogalo. Dr. Rogers, you want me respond to that, or you are collecting some of them and then I respond to
you may respond to that as we wait for other questions. We've encouraged them to ask people to. Or there's another one by Eugene. Maybe we can take this one as well.
Then there is a question and answer. Yes, Dr. Nyatundo.
Yes.
Dr.
Dr. Nyatundo actually is joining us from India. Is it possible to learn from the wild safari where we see free integration of animals roaming free across our borders? This is relevant particularly because EAC members normally complain against Kenya and Kenyans in their soil. That is Dr. Nyatundo. I'm not sure if you got it. Is it possible, this is very interesting, to learn from the wild safari where we see free integration of animals roaming free across our borders? This is relevant particularly because East African community members normally complain against Kenya and Kenyans in their soil. Then we have another question here, Doc, by Fiona. Doc, with internet creating a borderless global village that enables instant cross EAC collaboration from, for instance, digital trade, virtual communities, and cyber citizenship. Do you think this works towards amplifying the EAC people-centered integration challenges beyond colonial lines?
Then maybe we just take more questions from the hands that I raised. We can see. Let me see. Eugene and who else? Let me see. Eugene Amaya. Eugene, we have admitted it. Go on. And let me see another hand. That Eugene, go on. Eugene, we can't hear you. But Eugene Kitsumba, okay. We are asking you to unmute, and we are allowing you to talk again. So Eugene, both Eugene and Manuel, can you speak?
Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you. Go on.
Okay. Good afternoon. I have a question. You are talking about the challenges that we are facing East Africa, which are the cross-border spiritual and cultural ties, disconnection of families, and inability to share landmark resources. So my question is, okay. So my question in this is that in the cross-border communities, such as the pastoralist groups, which you have said the Maasai in the Kajiado and the parts of Tanzania, so does this principle of reciprocity, which you have said that it allows the respect for colonial borders, really create more division than unity? And how can the regional law respond to it? And my second question is that we find that the IALA, the East Africa, the Legislative Assembly, mostly favor, it is not a body that is elected by the people. We find that they elect themselves. So how can it be a people-centered, like in the context of our country, we find that the sovereign power, people are the ones who elect their leaders, but in the IALA, they are being elected by other means. So how can it be a people-centered organ? Thank you.
Very well, Eugene Amanya, Eugene Kitumba, statistics, and then we'll answer these questions even as we encourage you to continue typing on question and answer tab. Eugene Kitumba, please. Kitumba, you are not able to talk. Probably, Doc, you can go on. I like your raise your hand. Jeff, you will come in next.
Thank you very much, Dean.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you very much, Dean. So I have a question from Simeon Ogalo. And he's talking about overemphasis on colonial borders and how this has been solved in terms of similar products and laws. And I think what the current EAC is doing is to enact harmonization laws. So one of the main the main preoccupation is to see how to harmonize some conflicting legislation. So if there is a law in Kenya that permits ABC, but there's a barrier in DRC, the ELA meets and they sort of come up with a law that harmonizes those. So that is the main challenge. About Fiona, I think Fiona, this is a great question, and I think yes, you are right. There's quite some groundbreaking advancements of technology that have surpassed a lot of difficulties that were faced prior to the advent of the internet. But that is really beyond spiritual aspects and cultural connection and family ties, right? It has lessened the problem, but it has not reduced it entirely. I agree with you. This is an important entry point, but it should not be used as an excuse for allowing that cross border interactions among communities, by relying on the internet alone. Dr. Nyakondo, learning from safaris. This is quite profound. In fact, I know some of you laughed when the question was read, but nature, ecology has a lot to offer if we can observe and learn about it. So I think I challenge you to unpack a little bit more in one of your works. But I can agree with you that is a very important entry point to see that nature was not, discriminative. I'll tell you, for example, that among pastoralists, mobility is a very important pillar of the livelihood of pastoralism. And mobility prior to colonial invasion did not know any borders. You have strategic grazing areas that may not necessarily be in one country. And therefore, I think I encourage you to explore more because usually nature, ecology, and cosmology can teach us quite a lot of hidden lessons. Eugene Amanya, you talk about making it very hard to come up with uti possidetis. And in your conclusion, you think this is to create more problems. And I think listening to you, if you are still an emerging scholar, you will find yourself to be a decolonial scholar because you are looking at it from that point, which is actually suppressed. The dominant view is that it's a good thing, and it has pros and cons. And I don't dispute the fact that adherence to the principle of uti possidetis has been really, really key in making sure that a lot of border conflicts have been avoided. But I think as a person who looks at it, international law from the third world approaches and the colonial lenses, I think it also created a share of challenges that as Africans, we need to come up with some innovations and see how to lessen them, if not be able to remove them altogether. You talked about how to make the East African Legislative Assembly, and by that connection, the community more broadly, more people-centered through election process. Here in the East African Court of Justice, we have a very important case which I invite you to go and read if you haven't already. It was filed, I think, because that is the title, by Anyang Nyong'o. So I teach East African law for master's students, and it's a landmark case filed here to dispute the nomination process for members from Kenya to join the East African Legislative Assembly. And one of the central legal issue or question that was raised by the litigants and his lawyers is whether election include non-election, right? So I don't want to preempt the movie. I would encourage you, Eugene, to go and read that. But I agree with you, there is still room to make sure that these processes are made more people-centered rather than following what is convenient or political expedience for the region. Over to you, Dr. Rogers.
Very well. I'm assisting Dr. Rogers, and I've seen Dr. Komolo is here and he has raised his hand. Dr. Alvin Kiverenge, you have asked a very important question, and you are recently graduate of East African integration. I don't know whether you'd wish to speak as well or just read it out. But Dr. Komolo, your hand is up. And then Daktari, I believe you can see the quick Q&A questions there. If there's any that you can, you could also pick as we go. But let's hear Dr. Eric Komolo, then we have Jeff Odhiambo, then we'll have Mary Wali. Alvin, if you
Thank you. Can you hear me?
We can hear you. Thank you. Please go on.
Thank you very much, and thank you very much, my friend, Dr. El-Furaha. I followed keenly what you've been discussing, and I happen to also teach East Africa regional law. I was actually teaching it this morning. One of the things that continues to come up, particularly among Kenyans, regardless of whether you're talking about natural resources, extractive sector, or service sector, is the question of realization of the East Africa Common Market as per the East Africa Common Market Protocol, and of course as envisaged under the East Africa Treaty. Common Market has 4 critical distinctive features. One is free movement of factors of capital, factors of production, sorry. And the factors of production, as we all know, revolve around labor, that are human beings, around capital, that is being able to move money from one jurisdiction to the other, around land, acquisition of land and property rights, and entrepreneurship, the right to establish business. What is your view about actualization of common market protocol in the extractive sector, and also in the informal economy around pastoralist communities in the East African region. I have in mind what I think you have in mind. Our community, cross-border communities between Kenya and your country, Tanzania, and of course Kenya and Uganda, and to some degree South Sudan. 2, which is a live question. That's question 2. In about a month or so, there will be transition at the East Africa Community Secretariat. And we are supposed to have the term of the current Secretary General, Veronica Nduva, is ending in 2 months' time. She's from Kenya. And by rule of rotation, the next Secretary General is supposed to come from the Republic of South Sudan. You and I have probably read, since we are engaged in this space, about the crippling effect of underfunding of the East African community and its institutions at the moment. What do you think is the future of the East African community at a time that several members are raising questions about leadership transitions and realization of its main socio-economic objectives, particularly when there's real risk of leadership coming from countries that are not really fully participating in the affairs of the community. That it is probably the right time to start having constructive discussions about the patterns of contribution. Is equal contributions. At the moment, they contribute $7 million. That's about 1 billion Kenya shillings per country. Is it fair for Kenya, who are, as we think we are, to contribute the same amount as is your country, Tanzania, Sudan, Ethiopia, Somalia, and DRC, based, of course, on the models that already are applying elsewhere? I think you know about the European Union. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Doc. Dr. Lapuk, I hope you have noted that. And there are many interesting questions from, for example, we have clients. The client is asking, clients for Elvis, following the comparative discussion, what uniquely does both Kenya and Tanzanians bring to the international community, given the different experiences they have, whether education or otherwise? Odori is asking, what happened, for example, and maybe I'll just highlight his question by asking, what danger is authoritarianism forcing to the East African community dream? Because when you see the activists being detained or being returned or being deported from any of those East African countries, that's an issue that we should talk about. So maybe you'll answer that. Then Hilary Bika says, the treaty emphasizes that the benefits of economic impact shall be equitably shared. And this is a very important question. What concrete redistribution mechanism exists right now to ensure that there is this equitable sharing of benefits of economic integration? And then I'd ask Alvin to ask, but maybe no. Alvin, let me just what does the future of ESA look like in light of supremacy battles in Kenya, Tanzania, and especially when it comes to commerce? Then you also look at the online war going on between the Gen Zs of those countries. Then even the millennials are participating. And then do we really have hopes of getting to the political federation? I think you addressed that earlier, but you could still address it. Alvin Kebarenge. And then there's a question both to you and to Dr. Masio. Given your expertise in indigenous people's rights, and focusing on moving beyond commoditization to elaborate on the specific emerging international norms that you have mentioned. Where can we learn, or are we going to set new? Is it for us to set trends that others will follow? And then, Rogers, you have a question for you. I know you have an answer, but from Mercy as well. And then, Mary Wali, should we amend the treaty to include enforceable social economic rights, just as is found in the African Union? Okay. And then Celestine is asking, considering colonial borders are historical, is it possible to rethink them? Is it possible to are we got to a point where we can ask to redraw political borders, historical political borders? Adika, from there's so much, the doc, there's so much. I hope you got a chance to read through. There's one from Adika as well, Eugene, Kipchumba as well. Maybe they're the last three. Let me just highlight these last three and then we ask you to speak. And that would be the last round of questions. You mentioned emerging international norms supporting cross-border cultural interaction. How do we reconcile those or such norms with the principle of state sovereignty, especially when the government perceives such interaction as security? And then using Kipchumba, you're saying, what do you mean by commoditization in the context of the community? What do you really mean? Is it purely economic integration? And it does not reflect on other things as well. And then finally, Madam Mary says, well, others have come, but let me just highlight, since the ESC collapsed in 1977 over political differences, how does the current ESC make sure that the same doesn't happen? I think you addressed it earlier, but you can highlight it. And this is Dr. Gilly. I have to highlight your question. Concerning the factors of production, is there a way our ESC can create regional hubs similar to the US, so that we can tap our creative skills and strengthen our integration? And Eva, the last one, how effective is EALA in exercising oversight over the ESC? Doc, I will give it back to you, and please you could start with Dr. Komolo and address other questions, as many as you can. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dean. So, Dr. Eric Komolo, I think I need to make this clear to the Dean. I've known Dr. Eric Komolo since his days at Harvard, and so he knows my scholarly works. So he has asked the questions for which, if I respond, we may be here until cows come back home. So I've warned myself not to go there. But he raises very, very important issues, especially on the realization of the common market protocol based on the features. And one of the most important stumbling block is on the land. He talked about labor, capital, land, and the entrepreneurship. But I think the elephant in the room is land, because it also has a collision. It has some friction with another international law principle, giving what you don't have. Many countries consider themselves as land scarce. Others consider themselves to have more land, and therefore, based on the international principle of reciprocity, land becomes a little bit contentious. That if we agree to open up, what can we get in exchange from other countries? Because other factors are self-explanatory, except this of land when it is considered along the aspect of reciprocity, which is very important in the international law field. About pastoralists, and the extractive industry, I think I will skip that. Dr. Eric Omolo and myself will engage in discussions offline. And I hope, Dr. Rogers, you'll agree to be our referee when that meeting is convened. But he's raising another important aspect of the current turbulent moment for which the EAC is undergoing for non-payment of contribution by member states. And I don't know if our newspapers are read across borders, but last week I was in the media. I was interviewed about my views on that. And I can say the current chair of the EAC, His Excellency President Ruto, has convened an urgent meeting, an extraordinary meeting, and it has, among others, two agenda items. Number one, to look at the succession plan for the Secretariat, the Secretary General. But another is non-payment of contributions. And this briefly is what I said, and that is what has been recorded in our Swahili as well as English newspapers here last week. That is very unfortunate that some countries do not pay their contributions because that is the lifeline of the operationalization of the community itself. You do not expect someone to live if you have blocked access to oxygen. And therefore, that is a bad sign on the part of non-paying members that they don't have the political willingness. The political will is lacking from members who do not pay their contributions on time. But I also connected it to this talk, and I said it is a sign, it is a red flag that the integration process is a long way to go to be people-centered, because if a leader currently in power thinks it is not important, they can go away or get away with not submitting their contributions on time. And I can assure you, it's very constraining for colleagues working in the EAC at the Secretariat, because once you add members, new members from 4 to 8, for example, the Secretariat doubles. You employ new staff. You have more things to do, bigger coverage in terms of the jurisdiction to cover. And therefore, if they don't pay their contributions, I think it is indefensible. It is a sign that they are not committed. But lastly, I also said that is probably a wake-up call. A wake-up call that the recruitment of new members is really about commercialization. Probably existing members, including founding members, Uganda, Kenya, and Tanzania, were just excited that if we recruit new members, then we will have a bigger market. But that has not been realized. There are many people who have written about that. But also you recruit someone who is not contributing on time, and that constraints, it brings huge pressure in the smooth running of the Secretariat and so on and so forth. I think about the Secretary General, as it is common, is customary in international organizations, it should still adhere to the rotational basis, regardless of whether those new members have contributed or not. Probably bringing them in the leadership positions would remind them that they needed to pay on time. That's about it. But Dean, you have asked also other questions about Tanzania. What does it bring? which I think it brings the integration. It has a big market. It has a big workforce. It has a lot of farm products that are needed in the region, and so on and so forth. Dangers, someone talked about the activists and that are returned and the dangers involved. And I think the good way is to look at it very positively, that being one REC, a regional block, then it puts these things that are regrettable and indefensible into spotlight. I think it could be even harder to know those aspects involving activists if we were not one REC. So that is very important to continue addressing challenges, and amplify voices across the regions. Hillary asked about what can be done to concretely redistribute resources and fruits in order to avoid, the fate that faced the defunct East African community. And I think I will not answer that. That was my call. And Dr. Komolo, you are here. You teach EAC regional law. Probably that is a question to your students. Is the current EAC immunized from falling prey or succumbing to the causes of death of the defunct EAC? One of the factors was talked about, ideological differences, using the language currently there is neoliberalism and so on and so forth. Are we immune from those factors that led to the disintegration of the previous? About Gen Zs and future, I think, as I said, that should be looked at it from the positive aspect, that it gives us the platform to amplify voices and challenges because they are the same. These borders are very deceptive, but challenges are the same. It's just a matter of time, then you find yourself in the same challenges. Can we amend the East African Treaty, Community Treaty, to include the socioeconomic rights? I think this is very important, but I think it should go beyond socioeconomic rights and they look at collective rights, what human rights specialists call third generation rights, because that is where you find indigenous people's rights, emerging norms of international law that wants you to look at it from the collective or the semi-autonomous. Is really to go back to the pre-colonial settings of communities and respect their semi-autonomy, regardless of falling within a Westphalian model states. Can we redraw the colonial borders? My answer is no, we can't. We will open up the Pandora's box. As I said, the principle of uti possidetis has been very instrumental in avoiding interstate conflicts. I don't want to talk about, your own pending challenges with Uganda and a very small, I'm told, island, and so on and so forth. Then you can see how states can be sticklers to very, very small things that have no meaning to the common wanajumuia or wananchi. Harmonizing emerging norms of international law with the state sovereignty. In fact, the United Nations Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples, which embodies the emerging norms of international law, does not in any way question state sovereignty. It just wants it to be exercised consciously without using it to block community interactions. I've been asked another question again about the defunct EAC and what can we do to make sure that it's not happening again. And academic colleagues are here. Dean, Dr. Rogers, Dr. Komolo, you can make that as an assignment. I will not answer. But Kipchumba talks about commoditization in the East African context. What do I mean? And of course, I expected that question. Because probably the assumption, when you were told a Tanzanian is coming to speak about it, you would have thought that this guy is totally opposed to commercial aspects and commodities and the exchanges of goods and services. That's why our bar associations are still grappling with the cross-border legal practice, but really I'm going beyond there. It's not to oppose all that because they are good, they are fundamental to enhancing our economies, but we should go beyond. So what that means is that things that cannot reduced into monetary terms, you cannot commoditize, you cannot put within the frameworks and objectives of the Common Market Protocol should also be considered. And one way of doing that is coming up with a sui generis protocol. That is an original blueprint or brainchild of East Africans themselves who try to do that. And of course, someone asked a very similar questions and say, has it been done elsewhere? Or the EAC will be, a trailblazer. No. Implementation of the United Nations, Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples has gained ground globally, and the most important exemplars are Norway, Sweden, Denmark. The way the indigenous communities in Europe, assume cross-border interactions, and their parliaments, indigenous parliaments, offers a lot of lessons to be learned by the EAC. Finally, Mr. Dean, I've been asked how effective is the East African Legislative Assembly as a watchdog to sort of check the excesses. And I think that is debatable, but giving credit where it's due, it's trying to harmonize legislation that are problematic across regions. So every time they sit, most of the time they have a law or two that they think is important to harmonize in order to allow smooth implementation of the protocols that are already in force. Whether that has been successful is an academic question that invite some of you here to look at them. Thank you very much. Over to you, Dean and Dr. Rogers.
Thank you, Doc. I think I just want you to respond to this very, very quickly. What do you see from where you sit as the role of the legal academy, the role that the legal academy could play within the East African community integration process, but more particularly to reflect your thoughts on going beyond the commoditization, and of course then reflecting these spiritual and cultural perspectives of communities, local communities, and of course more particularly indigenous communities within the East African community. Do you think there's any role that the legal academy can play? Oh, we can't hear you, bro.
Oh, sorry. Thank you very much, Dr. Rogers Odhiambo. I think that's an extremely important question and very timely, especially to young scholars and law students for that matter. And of course, some of you may know that Kenyan scholars are really at the forefront globally in looking at these things. Some of you may have heard of the third world approaches to international law, professors like Makau Mutua and others, Professor Joel Ngugi, they have deconstructed a lot of these colonial or Eurocentric views, and they breathed in some emancipatory aspects for the legal academy globally to think about. So I would invite most of you to read those works from those extraordinary scholars who look at these things from there. But as I mentioned, Dr. Rogers Odhiambo, probably, I don't know, he didn't tell me what he teaches currently, but we both belong to a very small cohort of interdisciplinary academics who look at these things from the communitarian aspect. Those of you who had the chance to read Dr. Rogers Odhiambo's work, he looks at aspects, for example, like free, prior, and informed consent in the mining sector, that the business and human rights blueprint agreed by the UN talks about the states, talks about companies, but where are community members? If resources are located within the community, how do they? And you can find out that unless you can employ decolonial interdisciplinary and of course, radical scholarly viewpoints, the answers cannot be found in the laws that are inspired by the Western thoughts that put a lot of primacy and emphasis on individuals, as well as the sanctity of written contracts. So I think the Legal Academy has a platform already. We have a lot of wonderful work from the scholars, established scholars, forefront, academics, and they happen to be Kenyans. And of course, many of us can borrow a leaf and build from that very, very strong platform. And I think I welcome, graduate students, masters and PhD students to train themselves to look at these things from that vantage point, because the dominant, position is to ignore them. But if they develop interest already, there's quite some raw materials, I would say, some building blocks to do that and advance this viewpoint. Thank you. Back to you, Dr. Rogers Odhiambo.
Thank you, Doc. Thank you. That's very, very, very powerful. Thank you for those insights. I can't seem to see.
I think Dr. Eric Komolo's hand is up. I don't know if that is an old hand or is a new one.
That's an old one. I want to believe that's an old one. So I think at this point in time, I want to invite Dean Professor Wamwara to make his closing remarks, but also to move a vote of thanks. Thank you.
Okay. Very well. Thank you very much. I am impressed in every way by the level of interaction that has come from everyone. So before I go to the big names, let me ask everyone who has participated in the. I want to say thank you very much. I can also confirm that we were not able to answer every question. Jeff, I've just seen your hand, but we will engage you even further, even as we go along. Let me also thank you. There are so many people who joined us, even not from the Tom Mboya community, but there were others from Tom Mboya. So from Tom Mboya community who joined, we thank you very much for having joined. And I want to ask that we continue the discussion even after this. I want to take this opportunity to thank very much our leadership. Well, let me say Let me thank the Dr. Rogers Odhiambo for reaching out to Dr. Lantuka to make this happen. Daktari, thank you very much. We have been excited to want to read your work as well. Daktari, I promise to look at the work that you have quoted. And then I think the more we discuss, the more we realize that there's so much that's happening within ourselves that if we do not engage in these kinds of discussion, it will not be possible to learn from each other enough. We promised and purpose to make this at least at least 2 of these webinars every month, 2 every month. We have done this the first one this semester, but we hope to do 1 before the end of this semester. So, Daktari, you are the first one to start this series, and we thank you very much for you have set a very high bar. Thank you very much for the discussions you've asked, you raised, and some of the questions you have answered. They were very technical and difficult, in fact, including the fact that is it high time we thought the boundaries of is. You said no, I may disagree, but I'll engage you further on that. Our leadership at Tom Mboya Universities, we thank you very much for making this happen. Professor Ochola has struggled to get in. He was in a meeting, but he tried to get in. He has not been able to join us. But I know that our DVC, Professor Eli Joy Misheni was here early, just stepped out. We want to say thank you very much. And finally, I want to end by saying that Doc, we hope to host you here next semester. We will continue with the next academic year and the next semester. We will continue the discussion with Dr. Rogers, and you have in us people who can take your students through certain aspects of many things. So we can do a week here as part of the training for your students, and we will be very happy to host you here. It's by the shores of Lake Victoria, and if you've been to Arusha, not Arusha, but Mwanza, then the beauty of Mwanza, imagine it twice. That is what Homa Bay, the county of endless potential, where our university is based. Otherwise, we also look forward to doing the annual lecture and conference in honor of CMD Arvin's colleague of the one that we have named our school after, the first Black Kenyan to be admitted to the role of advocate and to practice law in this country. And that we will send those invitations to you as well. Other than that, we want to say thank you very much. We want to say thank you for everyone who made this happen. The faculty and to Fiona, member of our faculty, Fiona, who thank you also for your support from the office. Asante sana, and our ICT people, asante sana for making this happen. And with that, I think, I don't know whether I have the power to declare this event over, and we look forward to the next. Doc, do you want to say something before we end? Just a feedback.
Not then, but as I said when I began, thank you very much for inviting me, and it's quite an honor for the DVC to attend, and the reception more broadly. And thank you for welcoming me. I will look forward to coming to that beautiful part of East Africa.
Well, asante sana, karibu sana. We spoke a lot of English. Next time we meet, we do a lot of Swahili. Sasa tunasema asante sana. Mungu akubariki na tuonane majaliwa.
Asante sana.
Thank you. Thank you very much. God bless you. I will end this here. Thank you.